Hey everybody! Today we are going to be talking about Venus retrograde. Venus turned retrograde July 22nd, July 23rd, depends on where you are in the world. And to be honest, I don't know the exact time for Central Time. So depending on where you are in the world, July 22nd, July 23rd of 2023 is when it turned retrograde at 28 degrees Leo. It will turn direct on either September 3rd or 4th, depending on where you are in the world. 2023 at 12 degrees Leo, so it'll go from backwards from 28 to 12 degrees of Leo, and then it will go back through those same degrees again through, I believe it's October 8th, October 8th of 2023, and then it'll move along from these degrees that it will have been in for a while. Yeah, this one has kind of been on my mind a little bit personally. Definitely have had clients ask me about this, had friends ask me about this, so I wanted to, do something about it. Real quick though, I'll do something else about these little bad boys later, but the star cards are back for sale. They come in a nice box now. I wanted to pull out the card for it. Same cards, little different. I'll talk about that in another video, but I will put the link below where you all can find them if you all are interested in purchasing them. I know that some of y'all have been in the past and they were sold out. They're in stock now. So, but anyway, back to Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde. Okay, so the way that I think of retrograde planets, I think of them as turning the energy inward. The planetary energy, instead of flowing out, it flows in. So to me, retrograde planets are very, very personalized. And I think that, and that's in a natal chart, right? Though I think when a planet goes retrograde in transit, it can personalize that transit planet as well. And how much so does depend on what the fuck transiting Venus retrograde or transiting whatever retrograde is doing to your personal natal chart, what house it falls in, what aspects it's making, within the chart. But I do think that there is like a personalization that happens with retrograde planets. I also think there's a spiritualization that happens with retrograde planets. And it is a good time to, because it does turn the planetary energy inward, it is a good time to think about what the planet wants to express, because the planet is what energy is wanting or needing to be expressed. It's a good time to think about that planetary energy, or consider that planetary energy from what feels right to you, rather than looking for it from external places, if that makes sense. Or even expressing it in external ways. Though I want to be careful with that, because that's not always the case. But it definitely needs to be felt internally first. And with Venus, we're talking about things like values. We're talking about things like love. We're talking about things like relationships. We're talking about things like balance and harmony and these kinds of things. So it turns all of that energy inward. Now, I am talking about transit Venus retrograde here. But I do think that, transits kind of have a collective impact, right? So from a collective lens, we all kind of come under this influence, and then we can make it personal. Now, depending on, again, what it's doing to your chart and all of that will kind of depend on how this plays out for you personally. But I mean, Venus retrograde periods are generally a good are good times to really take stock of your own self-value, self-worth. I mean, in a sign like Leo, in a sign like Leo, in a more identity ego-focused sign, if you will. Jesus, those things are loud. Sorry. And it's, because it's ruled by the sun. So Leo is ruled by the sun. So there is like an identity thing. So to me, self-value does feel very important to take stock of during this period where Venus is retrograde in Leo. It seems like a good thing to, sorry, some notification popped up. It seems like a good time to take stock of that within yourself. Values in general, though, too. I mean, it doesn't have to be self-worth, self-value, but even just values, like what you value. What do you really value? Even if it's something that, say, the collective doesn't value on the whole, but you do. Maybe this is a good time to lean into that, to think about that, to perhaps value, really, really value that. Same thing about the self-worth and self-value thing. Perhaps there are things about yourself that the collective, you don't feel like values about you, or it's not something that the collective would normally value about somebody, but you value it. That's all right. This is a good time to kind of lean into that. And think about that and love yourself. It really is. It really, really is, because and I do think self-love is important here. Self-love, self-care under Venus retrograde periods. I think it is. Especially in a sign like Leo, which is more, again, identity, can express itself in an identity kind of focused way, and with ego, if you will. And I don't mean that like in an egocentric or whatever. I just mean Leo energy ruled by the sun. There is ego there. So maybe if you don't feel like, let's say you don't feel like your identity or your ego is quite where you want it. Maybe you don't feel like you have valued yourself enough for this in the past. Maybe this Venus retrograde period is a good time to go inward and think about that. And do some valuing of yourself. Some self-love, things like that. This period of time could be very good for that. Definitely doing things that help to make you feel balanced internally, right? Venus is also balance and shit. Balance and harmony and shit. So definitely doing things that help you with internal balance, because again, Venus, because the retrograde motion of Venus is turning it inward. Internal balance is very important here. Feeling balance from an internal place is important. This could even be, Leo energy, again, ruled by the sun, can tie in with like life force and vitality and all of this. And it could be that, like, I don't know, if you find during this period that that you don't have quite as much of your life force vitality, it doesn't feel like it's available to you for some reason, it could be that something isn't totally balanced. That needs to be balanced. So going inward to try to figure that balance out, or figure out what needs to be balanced, could be something that could be done during a Venus retrograde period. Specifically this one. Another thing is relationships. I'll hear people say that relationships shouldn't be started under Venus retrograde periods. Whatever. If they do, they do. Whatever. And I've also seen that, like, because this is something that people have asked me about recently, and even just shit that I'll creep online and see. Relationships will end under Venus retrograde periods. I mean, it could happen, but it could also, a relationship could end during Venus direct too. Venus is direct more than any of the other planets. It goes retrograde the least. So more than likely, your relationship is going to end under a Venus direct period. Just throwing that out there. But I mean, could relationships end under a Venus retrograde period? Sure. I think the most important thing with relationships, though, isn't so much if they're starting or stopping, but that we think about and process and ponder and all of these things, what we really need in them. Internally, what we really, from an internal place, from a personal place, what the fuck do we really need in them? I was, what do we really need in them? I was thinking about this kind of thing. This kind of feels like a Venus retrograde story a little bit. So I was here in Austin with my boyfriend. I say boyfriend like that because he and I have both laughed about the term boyfriend because it's such a silly term. It makes it sound like we're like in 6th grade. But I was with, I don't know if he even watches this. If he is, he'll laugh. Okay. Anyway, I was with him this past weekend and we were in this creek. This like, natural water. So there's like muck and shit and there's like slippery fucking rocks and my clumsy fucking ass is falling around because of course I didn't bring any fucking water shoes. So I'm wearing my flip-flops, I didn't fall, but I was trying not to fall, right? Trying really hard not to fall. And he was walking ahead of me and he noticed that I was like I was way behind him. And he stopped and he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And he he took my hand and helped me walk through this muck and through these slippery rocks. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I was thinking kind of going back to previous long-term relationships that I've had. Okay. If it had been my first boyfriend that I ever had in my life, he would have been hoping that I did fall so that he could hold me under. Like that motherfucker wanted me dead. He wanted to kill me. The other one that the other long-term relationship that I had, when I was a lot younger, he probably would have taken my hand and tried to help, but he was very lost. So I'm not sure how much help he would have been. And then I think about my ex-husband, who probably would have just given me the kind of look that Walt gives Jesse in Breaking Bad, because he gave me those looks all the time, like, you fucking dumbass. Why can't you walk straight? So I'm thinking about these things as I'm holding his hand walking through this, and I'm like, fuck, this is nice. Actually having somebody take my hand and help me. My Capricorn moon ass ain't really gonna ask for help. Not really. But just to have somebody offer this, I don't know. That is something that I value in relationships. And I knew that I valued that. But it really sunk in and hit me like, this is a Venus retrograde thing. I'm going back through previous relationships that I've had, long-term relationships, the ones that were like, really, all of these were like 2 years or more that I'm thinking back on. And I'm, it just feels like a Venus retrograde thing to do. What do you really need in relationships? Now, I know I need more than just that, but think about things like that, I guess is my point. With that story, think about things like that. What do you really need in them? What really feels good? Venus is also like comfort and shit too. Like, what feels good to you? Not what you think is supposed to feel good or be comfortable or be okay with or tolerate or whatever. But what really feels good to you. I think that's a big deal here as well within relationships. So this might be a good time, depending on what it's doing, depending on what Venus is, because generally speaking, I do tend to go the self-worth, self-love, or even just love and values route with Venus retrograde. But the relationship thing could fit too, but not necessarily like needing to start one or end one, more like just thinking about what you actually need in them. What works for you, what doesn't, what feels right, what doesn't, what you love and appreciate, what you don't. This might also, and this, I mean, it could be a time, and not just with relationships, but with things that, like, if you find that the value that something held, say it did hold value, but it doesn't anymore, perhaps this is a good time to start kind of getting that out of your life. Whether that's a person, place, thing, whatever. Getting it out of your life. Or letting it go, starting the process of letting it go anyway, or whatever. So that you can, have in your life what you love, what you value, what makes you feel good about yourself. Yeah, these kinds of things. The last time this was retrograde in Leo was in July, August of 2015. But I'll say this, I believe it started, the retrograde motion actually started in Virgo. Then, so this one is a little different because we're talking about it being in Leo completely this time. But there could be some callbacks, some themes and things that maybe happened July, August 2015. There could be something similar about this period. There could be. I also want to mention the transiting nodes just moved into, the transiting north node just moved into Aries, transiting south node just moved into Libra. Back in 2015, the transiting north node was in Libra, and the transiting south node was in Aries. So we did have, Venus being the planetary ruler of the south node now and of the north node back in 2015 does kind of highlight that too. Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that out there. If you all, if anybody wants me to read for them, whether it's about Venus retrograde or whatever, I will put where you can find me in the description box below. And I will see y'all later.